This is Media Philosophy, and we're exploring the deeper side of nostalgia with childhood gaming. We're talking those games that you played as a kid. I'm gonna start feeling some feels, and I want you to just think back when you were a kid and you didn't know good from bad. You didn't know what was a good game, you didn't know what was a terrible game. You just enjoyed it. Time was endless, and I'm very thankful for the time that I grew up when it comes to gaming. I feel like I definitely grew up in a golden age of gaming and still do because of the options that were available to me as already as a kid. Someone who I would say, well, like first console would be like the Nintendo 64. If there was like a console to really define my childhood, it would be the Nintendo 64. So with it being the Nintendo 64, I already had, the access to those games and already the Super Nintendo. Never really played too much of the NES as a kid, but being able to, I was always blown away whenever I was playing things like the Sega Genesis, ugh, or the Super Nintendo. Just remember the CRT graphics of Super Mario World or Sonic the Hedgehog. Just, oh, I'm getting chills right now. It was just mind blowing and so much fun. So again, I already had access to this peak catalog of games, and not that I even had tons of Super Nintendo games to play or access. I feel like I did have a good number of Sega Genesis games, and they were just so much fun. But I do still remember being able to play a lot of one like Donkey Kong 1 and 2, Mortal Kombat, and they were just always a blast to play. But then while the Nintendo 64 was just so janky as it was, there is so many just, I feel like, pure moments of gaming within that console just because developers were forced to work with such a weird constraint. There's a reason why you find so many titles on the top 100 gaming. There's a reason why you find so many titles that are coming from the Nintendo 64. Things like Super Mario 64, Banjo Kazooie, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, or the correct answer of Legend of Zelda's Majora's Mask. But just something about the combination of graphics, which led to this certain aesthetic, to basic gameplay and experimentation, just led to some really awkward but memorable moments. Let's be real, looking at it objectively, the Nintendo 64, the PlayStation era, Dreamcast, some of the worst times in gaming. Probably one of the most common complaints that you can just see throughout any game during this time is just camera control. Again, you can just find it with Super Mario 64, like Sonic the Hedgehog and the Adventure, Sonic Adventure on the Dreamcast. Just cameras seem to be the real main final boss. But as a kid, as a 7, 8 year old, you have a tolerance for that. You learn to live and work around the camera. When you fall off a ledge in Mario 64 because of the camera, you're just like, oh darn, let's try it again. Now you're gonna go rage online as a 30-year-old when really you should be doing other things. I'm not knocking 30-year-olds who game. I'm one of them myself. This is, again, me projecting out into the world. But it was nice just being able to be a kid during arguably one of the worst times in gaming, or one of the most experimental times in gaming, because I just was able to get through it with a smile, where people a lot older than me probably were very disappointed during this time. Because again, it's just wonky from controls. I mean, the fact that it took Halo to nail down first person shooter controls is insane. But even outside the Nintendo 64, there were so many other fun gaming opportunities. Kids nowadays, I guess, do have these as well, but I feel like they're just thrown crap because there's so many ads on like iPhones and whatnot. But I would just play those humongous games like Pajama Sam or Spy Fox or Freddy Fish. Those games were amazing. I still have such a place in my heart for point and click games to this day. Thanks to those sort of games, and I hope to pass those sort of games on to any kids that I might have. Because, I mean, they were just so pure fun. The animations in Pajama Sam or just all those games were so vibrant. I mean, I'm sure if I went back and looked at, Pajama Sam, Thunder and Lightning ain't so frightening, I bet I'd be like, okay, maybe this isn't as good as I remembered. But again, it's just going back to being a kid. And I just remember there being just enough puzzles to keep me engaged. Even though, once you beat it enough times, there's sort of a set combination of what you can do. But kids like repetitions. They want to watch the same movie every time. I still want to play the exact same games all the time. So, of course, 8-year-old me is going to do even more. Is even going to be even more extreme. I'm just so glad I was there to witness the revolution, the gaming revolution from like Nintendo 64 to Nintendo GameCube, PlayStation 1 to PlayStation 2, and the birth of the Xbox. Oh my god, I almost threw up just thinking about the first time playing Halo, just how good feeling those watermelon size controllers in my small little boy hands and just killing those Covenant grunts and elites. Oh my goodness. It was so pure. And I wonder if kids get such pure experiences anymore. I'm sure they do, but because things have been so refined, I wonder if they just really know when something like hits them and like this resonates. Of course, I mean, I guess whatever's contemporary. Because even as a kid, during that grand revolution, you could see the improvements everywhere. I mean, it's going from like Mario 64 to Mario Sunshine. It's just night and day difference. It's night and day feel. Just the energy, the colors is insane. And you could just look at a million examples. Metal Gear Solid 1 from Metal Gear Solid 2, Halo 1 to Halo 2. That, to this day, in my mind, is the most incredible video game sequel ever. And the fact that it's on the same console, the Xbox, is insane to me. But what I got to experience was such a rapid improvement in gaming. I got to see the refinement firsthand where kids now are, I don't know if they're reaping the benefits or paying for our sins. Because while we do have still a big, wonderful backlog of games for kids to enjoy that they can, go look for, it seems like a lot of games today do engage in some weird predatory behavior. I mean, there's a reason why games like Fortnite and Apex Legends are free. I mean, when something's free, you're the product. So apparently it is more advantageous for them to just release this free game out. Obviously, good games are always gonna exist, and cash grabs are always gonna be there as well. So what are you gonna do? You can't focus. And I'm not a kid anymore, so, I don't even know what's really popular. I am just so glad that I got to witness this rapid revolution in gaming. It is hard to go back to some games on those Nintendo 64. Probably because it is the first time people had to develop games to have characters explore three-dimensional space. I mean, not really the first time, but part of that whole era of that first time, where I can still play so many Super Nintendo games and even NES games and get so much joy out of them. Like, there's some, especially those, like, arcadey games that are just meant to be played over and over again, like Mega Man or whatever. I don't know. I can't stop playing things like even the original Super Mario World or whatever, because it was so, I'm not gonna say easy to refine, but those games were at the peak of their cycle. They were, I guess those games were kind of like the end of the improvement cycle of that era of gaming. Not even a generation of gaming, an era. I would say we have entered the new era of gaming, but yeah, that was like the 2D era. That was like the 2D era of gaming. We're talking things that are starting with like Pong or Snake, and then you get things like Pitman or Asteroid, and then Pac-Man, but keep going there from Mario, Super Mario Bros. To Sonic to all those other games, Kirby, and then it all ends on the Super Nintendo, and that would, I would say, like the 2D era of gaming. I guess before that would be like board games. But anyways, yeah, so that would be like the 2D era. And now we have this 3D era of gaming, which, just like how the 2D era of gaming never really ends because 2D games still exist to this day. They do get less popular, the AAA companies engage in them less and less. I would say that soon, relatively soon, we are going to find ourselves in that next era of gaming. I mean, God, what year did Pong come out? I mean, let's see. We'll just say that Nintendo 64 came out like, I don't know, 95-ish. 95-ish. And we'll just say Pong came out in the 50s. So that's a good 45 years, we'll say, more or less. So then that means we got a good, like, 15 years, I would say, to see the next era of gaming, which has to be some sort of VR. That's gotta be it. And while it's cost prohibitive now, it's only gonna get more accessible. Unless, I mean, this is probably gonna have to be a different video, so this is all I'm gonna say about this for now. Unless there's just gonna be like psychological barriers, like I feel like I'm not gonna be able to adopt 3D VR technology just because I want to still be aware of my surroundings. But I know kids are already getting used to it, so it's who cares what I think? I'm not the target demographic. I'll just stick to playing Banjo-Kazooie. I'll keep trying to save Termina in 3 days. Back when games had single player storylines, they still do. What's wrong with me? Like I said, I'm very happy that I can get to play every cool game and still have access to every cool game thanks to the Steam Deck. And while gaming may not be the most productive way to spend a childhood at all, I mean, let's be real, it's probably one of the least productive ways you can spend time. You're just sitting there pushing buttons. I mean, maybe it does teach some skills like perseverance, reading, if you actually do read, some thought, some idea of consequences. But, really hard skills, it doesn't really teach anything. So while maybe on some level, parts of my childhood I didn't get many practical skills out of, the times I spent gaming and the memories I made and just the memories and the connections I had with friends, I don't know, I would say was special. Can I say it was worth it? I don't know. I mean, I can't go back in time, so there's no point souring the past. I might as well look through rose-tinted glasses, right? If I can't change the past, I might as well talk it up. And it's great that I'm able to revisit my past in so many different ways, whether it's playing the games, whether it's making videos about them on YouTube or watching speed runs, people beating my favorite games in speed runs. There's just a lot of ways I can revisit my childhood and still rekindle some of those feelings. I feel very lucky that I'm able to retain some of those fun childhood feelings, and it's through games that I would play when I was in middle school, high school, elementary school, just instantly take me back to certain people. Oh, I'm tearing up a little bit just thinking about this. But I don't know if I'm the only one who feels this way. I'm sure I'm not. So I'm going to keep gaming. I hope my hands can keep up. But maybe in the next 15 years, once rheumatoid arthritis probably catches up with me, then there'll be a whole new way to experience games, and I can still play the Super Nintendo in 2045 and beyond. This is Media Philosophy, exploring the deeper side of entertainment.